This is the midpoint of the season. We're currently in the 4 week long compulsory season break. Teams have to put down tools for at least 2 weeks of those and enjoy a bit of a break. No work on the car at all. So it's probably what will be going on though is plenty of driver negotiations, and we'll get to that shortly. Let's though look at the season so far. If we just bring up the points at the moment, Lewis Hamilton is the man to beat. He is leading. Then it's Nico Rosberg, Daniel Ricciardo, and Kimi Raikkonen. Sebastian Vettel after him. That's something you wouldn't have said at the beginning of the year. Kimi Raikkonen beating Sebastian Vettel in the points so far. Then Max Verstappen having switched to Red Bull midway. Bottas, Perez, Massa, that's Williams, Force India, rounding up the top 10. And it's Carlos Sainz, Grosjean, Alonso, Kvyat, Button, Magnussen, Wehrlein, Van Dorn, Gutierrez, Palmer. And not on the chart I've got at the moment are the other three drivers, Haryanto, Nazar, and Ericsson. You'd have to say so far that Lewis Hamilton, on previous form, looks like he will just romp away to this World Championship, which is something I kind of hoped. Wouldn't say I hope there'll be a decent fight, but it looks like that's all but being snuffed out.
Yeah, certainly. Like, Lewis certainly has the edge over everyone else. Outside Mercedes, everyone knows that he's got the fast car, the car that everyone is still chasing after 3 good seasons of F1 racing, so he's got the edge over all the other drivers, and then, just head-to-head with Rosberg, like, he's just got the edge over him ever since Spain. Rosberg has just been almost all over the place. Like, we saw at Monaco, like, he was just very slow, brake issues, his mindset wasn't there.
Ever since the collision, which is interesting, because that happened in 2014 as well, and that was even a minor thing where he just tapped the side. It should have been a racing incident, and since then he was forced to back off. Same things happened this time, and I think he's backed off, maybe just no point getting into it. At that point, his contract as well wasn't exactly fully signed. Now that his contract is signed, yeah, but you'd have to say that Hamilton has got the momentum at the moment. Rosberg,
yeah, but, it won't be like a simple just
it won't be.
As many points
I
as
highly doubt it
Abu
will
Dhabi.
be a blowout like 2015 was.
No,
because Rosberg has got a bit more to fight for. You always come back better in the second season after defeat. And as well, you never know what happens after the mid-season break. Rosberg could sort these situations out. And the thing is that so far this season, they're 6-5 on wins, which is, of course, Rosberg got 4 in a row, and then it's been Hamilton ever since. But yet, that's still fairly close. So, of course, the only other man to take a win is Max Verstappen, who has been there as well. The Red Bulls, in particular, being quite strong. Very strong, in fact, if we look at the constructors' standings. It's the first time since 2014 that Red Bull have been ahead of Ferrari and they've got a good margin there of 14 points. You'd have to say it's good news for Red Bull, but it's ringing the alarm bells again for Ferrari, the fact that they've squandered so much momentum that they carried over from 2015.
Yeah, like, we've talked about this in the past, in the podcast, and, just how Ferrari is at the moment and the environment and what they really need to achieve, but this is a real big boost for Red Bull, especially when you consider where they were 12 months ago. So it's a really big accomplishment, just to be ahead of Ferrari at some point of the 2016 season, when you consider where they were in 2015. We haven't actually talked that much about it in the recent past, but this deal with that they have with Tag Heuer, the watches, it's paid absolutely.
You could argue that's pretty much financed their researchers as well as the Aston Martin deal as well. They've got the aero time as well. Renault have given the engine a good kick as well. The chassis is probably one of the best ones they've had for a while, and you've got to say they got probably one of the strongest driver lineups now on probably the strongest championship free driver lineups as well, and they probably both came pretty cheap as well, given the fact they were both taken from Toro Rosso. You'll notice as well there's a big gap between Ferrari and Williams. Williams and Force India have only got about 15 points between them, and that's going to be another interesting battle that we could see heat up in the next few rounds for these the battle for second place, the second place Mercedes team, which for a long time was Williams, but then Force India gave them a good run for their money at the end of last year. Same could happen this year.
Yeah, so like at the very beginning of the podcast, all the way back at the first episode, I did rate Force India quite highly heading into the 2016 season, and when you just factor in everything that's happening, especially with the R&D with Williams and Force India, I wouldn't be that surprised if Force India does finish in fourth place for the constructors. When you look at it, like Massa's not in form, Perez and Hulkenberg, they're having really good seasons. They're really enjoying themselves. Bottas, sometimes he has okay weekends, sometimes he has absolute shockers, and also he is basically almost carrying Williams because it's been about 4 races since Massa had a points finish. So
yeah, that's a big thing, and it's interesting as well. Force India have generally had very dodgy starts to the season. Last year as well, they take a while to get the money coming in. This year, of course, they've got problems with Vijay Mallya's ownership of the team is under scrutiny because of some dodgy tax dealings going on. But yeah, they finally put it together. And I think a lot of people have been surprised at the fact that Sergio Perez is almost since Hulkenberg won Le Mans. Sergio Perez has been consistently outperforming him so far this year. We'll talk a bit about Perez as well when we get to the silly season. McLaren has been one of the talking points. 42 points, a much better place than when they were last year. I'm fairly sure last year they only got their first ever double points finish at this point of the season. So yeah, very strong results for them. Is that good enough? They're 3 points behind Toro Rosso, who have Carlos Sainz and Danny Kvyat driving for them, as opposed to Fernando Alonso and Jenson Button. Is this really acceptable, considering where we thought they would be? Of course, the last year, Fernando Alonso said we'll be getting podiums by the end of the season. Are the expectations have the expectations been met from Honda and McLaren?
Well, I think with Ron Dennis's expectations, like he's much more into the actual development of the car and the Honda engine than what Alonso is. So I think he'd be pretty happy about where he is. Like,
there's 2 sets of expectations here. There's Alonso and there's McLaren, and those are the 2 forces in this entire thing.
Yeah, and like also when you factor in that they're very close to Toro Rosso at the moment, only 3 points behind. Like if Williams and Force India have like 2 bad races, then they could be right there behind them as well if they have 2 solid ones. I think they'll be pretty happy about where they are. Like they go and get over the 50-point mark. They probably won't challenge the 100-point mark, but that will certainly be there. So if they get 100 points, then they'll be absolutely wrapped with that.
And they've been able to now they've got to the point where they're consistently having at least one car finish in the points.
Yeah, and like, they're really showing, good fight. The McLaren strategy on race day is pretty okay. They haven't thrown any big blunders out there.
They haven't had, and the other thing is mechanical issues. Last year they went for the size 0 approach, which probably undid them a bit. This year they seem to have nailed it. Ferrari have since gone for that size 0 approach and had some issues with that as well. But it seems like technically the only issue is the deficiencies in the Honda engine, and that's about it. So far.
Yeah. So like, and even that, that's like with the resource points rule, like it's all backed up. All the updates are backed up, and that just shows a little bit of preview about how big and dangerous they are going to be, especially towards the back end of the 2017 season. So. Yeah, like McLaren, even though they are 7th on the verge of getting 6th at the moment in the Constructors, there's no reason why they can't be 4th this time next year. And, that'll be a really proud moment for McLaren and for Honda as, you can really see that they really, really want to challenge, Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari. I won't be surprised if that happens in 12 months' time.
Speaking of expectations, House F1 have, it's been interesting to see where they were out of the blocks. Well, they've got 2 points finishes on the trot. Roman Grosjean was living the American dream, but things have, they sort of settled into this sort of upper back market territory of the grid. 6 months in, you'd have to say, the question is, have they exceeded our expectations? Because you have to remember that they're a new team. based in America, and that's where all the work goes down. They've got 2 bases. They've had to manage that. They've had to get the finances coming in, stay profitable. Had they exceeded their expectations, or has the magic sort of petered out a bit because their performances recently haven't been as exceptional as they looked like they could be at the start of the year?
Well, in terms of where Haas is at the moment, like Gene Haas has known for a very, very long time that there will be a new set of rule changes coming in for 2017. So this year was more about, just getting as much funds as possible into the team, establishing good relationships, especially with Ferrari, and also, just setting up a really good baseline for their F1 team. And they've done an absolutely fantastic job throughout the season. Like, even in the last Grand Prix in Germany, they had their cars 11th and 12th at one point, and they're almost renowned for getting 11th place, especially with Gutierrez. Like, he has had a bit of bad luck. He's not as good as Grosjean, like most people know that, but he is also on the verge of getting points. So it's not a one-man show at Haas. So they've certainly got a really good future ahead of them. Like, they're real hard races. Like, that's just their team philosophy. They're real races. They're not in it for the money. They're in it for the racing. And, it's been absolutely fantastic to see Haas, really perform. 28 points is certainly
they're comfortably in their own league. I don't think, I hardly doubt, they're pretty much confirmed now as 8th, which is quite good out of 11.
Yeah, especially when you consider, like, when the last big three, when the last 3 teams came in all the way back in 2010 with Virgin, Caterham, and HRT.
All failing to score points.
Yeah, all failing. And, for Haas to come in and score 28 points by the summer break, that's absolutely fantastic. It's going to be really exciting. Like, the future for Haas is really, really exciting, and they could become a real force in the midfield over the next couple of years.
Yeah, seems all very exciting. Speaking of the, so Haas looks like they'll move into the midfield. Speaking of the back markers, though, only 6 points for Renault, 1 point for Manor, and no points for Sauber. Very much the pressure's on them to keep going. Renault, considering the fact they've gone with little development, they've got pretty much no error on that thing at all.
It's more re-establishment year for Renault.
Yeah, and the fact that they've got some points. They've been able to evaluate a few drivers, and of course, I think even now they're pretty much nice. I don't think they'll be dropping any further because of Manor.
The only way is up for Renault.
Yeah, Manor as well. Considering this is the first year, they managed to get a point, which is of course an improvement on their past form, but still, it's a rocket ship, but they need to get the aero working on that. But then again, they're running on a shoestring budget, not surprising. Sauber, though, big disappointment this year. No points so far. Teammates crashing into each other. We'll talk more about Sauber. They managed still to get investment somehow from a couple of Swedes. Very disappointing year, and we thought it possibly could be their last year without this investment. They've really got to buck up for 2017.
It's not been that fantastic for Sauber. Their management hasn't been.
They've been outscored by a Toro Rosso in the 2015 Ferrari engine compared to their 2016 engine.
It's not been fantastic for Sauber. Like, their management just hasn't been up to scratch. They haven't been fantastic with strategy, and they've just had a really hard time of actually controlling their drivers. So it's not been a fantastic year for Sauber. The future does look bright with this investment if the investors really want to take the team forward and really get a good return. As we said in previous podcasts, it really does depend on how long just what the general mindset of the investors are and how long they are willing to continue pouring money into Sauber. And also, speaking of Sauber, they have actually announced that they will bring a set of upgrades for the Belgian Grand Prix at the end of the month.
Yeah,
so
upgrades for Sauber. That's quite the news story nowadays.
So it'll be really interesting to see where Sauber and Manor are at Spa, as Spa is definitely a power circuit, but it's also a high downforce circuit, which won't really suit their Manor. So if they get a good package, then and if the rain comes, especially over one half of the circuit, with one half dry and one half wet,
like we saw in the 24 hours of Spa,
and if some people make stupid mistakes, don't be so surprised to see them scoring points at Spa.
Yes, of course. Last year race at Spa, we saw the unlikeliness of Renault or Lotus getting a podium, so you never know what will happen